Well, good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to Webinar Wednesday, our special Veterans Day presentation today. For all you vets out there, happy Veterans Day and thank you so much for your commitment that you've made to our country. I know we have a few of our consultant team members and other friends of ours out there today. Just wanted to extend a very, very sincere and happy Veterans Day greeting to all of you out there. You know, today is a holiday for many of you, probably. It's a holiday for us at CSUB, but our commitment is to be here for you every Wednesday. And we plan on being here Veterans Day, the day before Thanksgiving, the day before New Year's Eve, then the day before Christmas Eve, continuing with the latest information in this ever evolving pandemic relief and pandemic information that's going on. So good afternoon. My name is Kelly Bearden, and I'm the director of the CSU Bakersfield SBDC, as you may know. And we're part of the national SBDC program in all 50 states and 6 other territories. Over 1,000 centers across the country bringing you services. Our region we're part of the Central California SBDC region, which includes 14 counties across the greatest part of California, the Central California region. So we cover Kern, Inyo, and Mono counties, those 3 counties, and we have another additional centers in Clovis, Merced, Modesto, Salinas, and in San Luis Obispo. So I remind you frequently to reach out to your SBDC if you have any questions or if they can be any of assistance to you during this troubled times that we're going through. So, wow, November 11th. Number 35 in our webinar series. So today, first and foremost, let's celebrate our veterans. Let's celebrate the commitment that they have made and honor them for their service to our country. Veterans Day has been known as Veterans Day since the 1950s. Many of you probably know it started off as a holiday right after World War I. And then after World War II and the Korean conflict, it was it was actually changed to Veterans Day. So Veterans Day, a great holiday, a little bit different show today, a little different format, different feel, but still plenty of other news to get to. Such as the news yesterday from the state of California that it appears that we're going to have 30 counties in California 30 counties that are going to be moving downward on the color tiered system, on reopening our economy, on the mandated closing or reopening, whatever you want to call it. So in that 30 counties, where it comes from yesterday is from the governor's press release that he does and news conference at noon. And what we found that yesterday 12 counties initially had moved either from the orange tier to the red or from the red to the purple. And we'll get into the maps and all this in just a little bit. But what came out of that also was the note that more than half of California counties were going to be actually moving to a more restrictive tier. So, you know, as you might know, I'm a little bit on the analytics side. So more than half. Well, there's 58 counties in California. So half of that is 29. Add 1, I come up with 30. We had 12 yesterday, of which 3 are appealing. We'll see how that goes. 3 are appealing the move, but the statewide trend is just not looking good, and not looking good locally either. We started having a little discussion the day after the general election last Wednesday and how it was going to affect the stimulus, the PPP, and other information and other stuff. And, you know, some of that maybe has changed. Last week was fairly confident that it looked like that the Republican Party was going to maintain a majority in the U.S. Senate. That is now a little bit more questionable. Now it looks like that race is 50 to 48. With 2 runoffs in the state of Georgia. Now, Georgia, really, how did you get 2 runoffs at the same time when everybody else has all their elected senators? And I really do feel sorry for you if you live in the state of Georgia and are listening to this, because we are now rid of our election advertisements on television. The signs are going away. Uh, the feel of an election is over here. And with your runoff coming in January 5th, you've got to be feeling that, yeah, this is going to be on for another couple months. And with so much at stake, having control of both parties, or excuse me, both houses of Congress and the executive branch, it's going to be an entirely different feel on who wins those seats. But what we're more interested in is, rather than the political side, is how the political side affects our small businesses. And so we're hoping that it doesn't impede any potential stimulus that might be in the works now that the election kind of played out and politics were involved in kind of the stimulus process there, and additional PPP and other things that'll benefit our businesses. But I really don't know. Really don't know. Hope that something is coming soon, as not only us in Kern County and us in the San Joaquin Valley and the Central California region are moving toward more restrictive openings for our businesses and the impacts of that, but it's happening nationwide. It's a national trend, and actually, even as most of you know, a huge trend in Europe as well, where their countries are actually closing businesses and shutting down economies in order to deal with the pandemic. So didn't really want to be talking about this 35 weeks into the pandemic, but we are. And on the good news on that front was there was some good test results that came back on a vaccine. So the vaccine really seems to be the hope, and moving ahead. So we'll get into a little more of the state and local mandated reclosings, as I'm calling them today. But we're also going to look at the BCARES program that still has money for City of Bakersfield grants for small businesses. They're still accepting applications online. We'll look at Kern Recovers as they start moving into the phase to where they're now going through the forgiveness application. And when we talk on PPP and forgiveness today, we're going to be really kind of going through that timeline. And with so much happening politically, also, with the political change, potential change, it looks like at the president's office. You remember, we've been talking a lot about Treasury Secretary Mnuchin. We've been talking a lot about SBA Administrator Carranza. And those are two individuals who will not be sticking around, as they are political appointees. And President-elect, I guess we call him, President-elect Biden would select his new members. And so the continuity that we've had from those that actually have been making the rules, the Treasury Department and SBA, are going to change. And it could reflect changes that are different between the philosophies of President Trump and President-elect Biden. So there's just a lot of uncertainty. Now, when we get into the PPP discussion, it's great because what do we know? We do know we have 10 months from the end of our covered period in order to file for forgiveness. And with a lot of questions that still need to be answered, we're going to probably be still doing that. And whereas I thought, weeks ago, maybe months ago even, that we would not be having this discussion on November 11th, now I don't know when this discussion is going to possibly end, as we could have more rules and regulations. We'll talk about some of the changes that are going on right now, and we'll get into all this. And we do have a special guest today, Mr. Dick Taylor, gentleman who I affectionately refer to as Mr. Kern County Veteran, or Mr. Veteran Kern County. Really a great service background and everything. And Dick will be joining us later on, and a little unusual format given the day, being Veterans Day, but Dick will be joining us. And of course, your questions and a poll. And we're going to only do one poll question because a lot to go through today, and really want Mr. Taylor to have plenty of time to talk about all the resources that many of us don't know about that are out there. And so it's going to be, our first and only question is going to be on PPP forgiveness application. And you might realize that we've asked this question several times, but now knowing knowing that you have 10 months at the end of your covered period to file for PPP forgiveness application, when do you expect to submit to your lender? So you've already filed, or you want to submit by the end of 2020, quarter one, which is the end of March 2021, and after April 1st. If you go 10 months from the end of the very earliest covered period, the very first due date for the very first PPP loan is going to be July 25th for that forgiveness application, which is good considering all the political stuff that we've been talking about. And we still have some income tax considerations to go through, so a lot to go through. And again, vote if you hope to submit or you've already submitted by the end of this year, by the end of the first quarter, and after April 1st. So yeah, the tax considerations now that a lot of people aren't going to be actually done with the forgiveness application are going to start coming into play, and we hope to address that soon. So we have about 58% of you that have voted, and we're going to end the poll right now and actually share it with you, our one poll today. And almost 40% of you hope to be filed, do the PPP forgiveness by the end of 2020. By the end of the first quarter of next year, 2021, 26%. Already filed 22%. Congratulations. Already filed 22%. If any of you that have already filed through your bank, and remember the process as you go through the bank and then it goes to the SBA, if you have heard back and actually have received notification that your PPP loan has been accepted, or if there's an issue with the SBA, please put that in our chat box. And we'll be using the question and answer box today for questions and answers that we'll get to a little bit later. And then those of you that hope to file after the first quarter, as you see, as we're sharing these results, 13%. So that's really interesting from the perspective that I believe back in August, I think most of you had hoped to have been done with this process by the end of September, maybe October. But the process is going on. It's going to take a while. There's going to be a lot of this. We're really noticing a lot of specific questions that have come up. And in many instances, some of the advice that we've been giving has been to wait, as hard as that might be. But really, there could be more answers and it might be more beneficial, and just waiting. So anyway, thanks for that. And we will move right along. So with my new share here, I'm going to move to what we're seeing actually. Let's see, this one right here, let's go. And we hope to do is we hope to start looking at, the state numbers again. And so we're looking at the county numbers, and this is really where we really started getting concerned a few weeks ago, when we were hitting about 50, 60, maybe 70 cases. Our new cases now total up to 208. So this virus is out there and it's in the community, and it's spreading, and it's a problem. And it's a problem for our businesses. Fortunately, we have no new Kern resident deaths to report, but with 208 new cases, it's really, really problematic. And so there are Kern numbers as we see them. Moving on to, let's go to the state, go local and then state. You'll see that we've had businesses that are moving from the red substantial into purple. And with our Kern numbers that we'll go over in just a moment, it suggests that since we are going to be over 7.0 in daily new cases, and we're not over the positivity rate, which is 8%, but by moving over this one alone, 7.0 for 2 consecutive weeks, will throw you into the higher bracket if you cannot stay within these. So, and it's not hitting one of all the 3, it's hitting all 3. So being in substantial now, our positivity rates are fine. The health equity quartile is fine. So that's kind of that issue there in the other 4 tiers. So here's what the new the new guidelines that came out yesterday, the new map, you'll see the statewide metrics up here, 8.4, and that has been rising substantially. Yesterday, we did have some counties in the San Joaquin Valley that actually went over. We had Stanislaus County. Stanislaus was one of the 3 counties to appeal. Their appeal is going to be notified to them today. El Dorado County in the Sierra Foothills also appealed. They were going to be moving from yellow to red, and then another county as well. But what we're seeing is Sacramento County, which actually turned purple yesterday. We saw San Joaquin County actually have numbers that if they all have the same numbers next week, go purple. Stanislaus, Merced County, purple is bound. Fresno County, we're looking at a San Joaquin Valley after Kings that is going to be completely purple in my estimation by as early as next Tuesday. Not good numbers. As we click on our Kern numbers, we'll see that the internet's going to eventually tell us what our numbers are, and we're not. But for Kern, I have the numbers right here. So there we go. Our new COVID cases per day per 100,000 residents, of which we're close to 1 million people, and let's say it is 1 million people, would be about 80. So we're just showed you a chart that said 208. That does not bode well, as there is the time lag in these reportings. So adjusted case load 8.9 and a positivity rate of 5.2. If we do, as expected, move into the purple category next week, the widespread rate, we must remain in that for at least 3 weeks if things get better. So we're looking at potentially the earliest we would be able to get out of it if we go into it next week is 4 weeks away. So roughly around the 6th of December or so. And that's highly unlikely given the fact that we're going in such a wrong direction. So not good news for all. And it's interesting, you'll see Mono County here where they might be getting an exception from the state because the state has come out and said, and last week we discussed that they had a military base there, the High Sierra Warfare Center, which is about 20 miles north of Bridgeport on Highway 395 and up there nearby Sonora Pass. They had an outbreak on the base of where they had upwards of 70 people that were tested positive. And the base is so rural, it's not like more of an urban type base setting where the base really interacts with the community, and they might be getting a reprieve. We still see moderate in Inyo County, so that's good. It'll be interesting to see how this appeal goes for Stanislaus, which in my estimation will be purple as soon as the appeal is done, but that's just my guess. So a rather gloomy set of numbers on the tier system to report. If we go look at it on a national level and kind of look and see what is happening from a national perspective, as my internet seems to lag this today, is we kind of see, some of the things. There's Mono County right there. And you see very high rates for Mono County that are shown at least on the national report. And that's the source there is Johns Hopkins University, which is very, used as far as COVID-19 information and numbers everywhere. So what we're seeing is really not a good 140 new cases a day there. So, but really, it's just not a good thing. It's not a good situation. It's not good for our businesses. It's not good for our population. It's kind of weird though. Look at Utah. Utah's got a bunch of counties here kind of around Salt Lake, Park City that are kind of blown up here. And then the majority geographically of the rest of the state has 0 cases. So it's a weird thing. That's all I can say. Moving on to some of our programs that we have that are out there still, we talked a little bit about the BCARES program, and BCARES right here on, it's still time to apply and apply online. You can receive up to $20,000 grant for businesses that have 25 and fewer employees. So if you're within the city limits of the city of Bakersfield, that program is open for you. We also have the program in Wasco. So the few of you on maybe from the city of Wasco, you have an opportunity here for a little grant program as well with Wasco. And the City of Roses is giving out money for their small businesses as well. So that's a little bit about what is going on from that perspective. We do have some testing we'll talk about in a minute. But let's talk a little bit about a couple of things. Let's talk about, and I don't have the slide up here now, but there's a program for you veterans out there, an entrepreneur program. Last year around Veterans Day, I think it was our 100th webinar of all time. Maybe it was back in July of 2019. Since 2013, when we started webinars, we had one on what was called the Veteran Launch Program. And it was an entrepreneurial outfit, and they're based in Oakland, California. And they work on getting entrepreneurs that are veterans financing. And they utilize all the programs that are out there, some unique and special programs. And sorry, I don't have their slide up. We're going to include it in the resources this week and also give you a link to last year's webinar, which was exclusively on the Veteran Launch Program. It could also be found in our YouTube channel at CSUB SBDC, our YouTube channel. So we'll get you more information on that, and contact us directly if you want more information, or contact the fine people at Veteran Launch. So a little bit came out on the PPP this week, and we had some pretty good information. And there were two forms that came out, and they were basically loan necessity questionnaires. That was, one of them was for profits, which was form 3509. One of them was for nonprofits, which was 3510. And it deals with only those 30,000 loans that were actually over $2 million. With a lot of talk about PPP fraud, and with the new administration coming in and likely a new Treasury Secretary and SBA Administrator, as we had talked about earlier, you know, a lot of this can change. Last week, for example, a judge ruled that whereas in the past, borrowers that received PPPs in the amount of $150,000 or less did not have to be publicly recognized. They didn't have to have public disclosure that they received it. So if you received $149,000 PPP, unlike if you received $51,000, where your name was actually mentioned and available on websites and others, it looks like that now very strong possibility that everybody who received a PPP is going to be there for public information. So part of this is on the fraud issue, I believe, because now it makes it easier to identify and for whistleblowers to sound out fraud. And also it gives plenty of opportunity for other things to come up out of that. So here's just that form. Again, it's 2 million and over. There's probably maybe no one on here with this. But in going through this 10-page form, just real quickly, hopefully this doesn't go any smaller than the $2 million and up on PPP. There's always that chance it could go to smaller loan amounts. And it just comes back to the necessity. Did you really need this money? Which was one of the things that you certified to when you signed up for the PPP program. Again, right now, only concerned with large borrowers who were given the opportunity to opt out once the rules started becoming more clear. So a lot of things that you'll see here, it'll talk about your revenues from your previous year and previous quarter. It'll talk about how your business was affected by COVID. And in reading this, there's not a lot of gray area. These are very specific questions that you need to provide very specific answers to. And again, I'm not going to go over this in great detail because I want to get onto our Veterans Day program, but still this is something that could be addressed with smaller borrowers and even adapted even smaller as we go on. So this has not been released by SBA yet. They're getting comment on it. It'll change most likely. Some of the assessments include a liquidity assessment on basically how liquid your business was and did you have the resources? Did your business need to close? Were some of the other things? How affected were you and what dates even? And then it gets into the forgiveness aspect. 3509, 3510, new forms that we have. So we'll see. Okay, so if you have any questions on this stuff, please hit the question box, and I'm going to go back here, move on to this. And we do have some more free testing. That's not the right one. These are, though. Somehow I got the wrong slide in. So we do have some free testing. The Latino Task Force and the Hispanic Chamber through the County of Kern are offering free COVID testing. And starting tomorrow, it's going to be in Shafter, and Friday in Bakersfield, Saturday in Bakersfield, and Sunday in Bakersfield. Or excuse me, those are going to be in Delano on Saturday and Sunday. I highlighted the wrong one. It should have highlighted Delano up here where it is. But Adventist Health of Bakersfield, those 2 days are going to be giving free mask. So again, Shafter on Thursday, Friday Bakersfield, Delano on the weekend on Saturday and Sunday. So free testing. You're getting into a timeline now where I'm hearing people having to wait a week again and 10 days to get the results back. If you have grandma who's coming over for Thanksgiving and you want to get tested, this is a good opportunity. Or as I like to say, my 87-year-old mother might come over for Thanksgiving if she wants. Now, she's out more than I am right now, so I'm thinking that I might, instead of wearing a mask, have her wear it. But still, it gives you that reassurance with the holidays coming up. So take advantage of that when it's available. Again, our timeline, you have 24 weeks to use it in the covered period. I don't see any reason not to take the 24-week covered period because right now it extends unless you've already filed 8 weeks for forgiveness and you're done, or you're going to do so relatively soon, because again, that 10-month window goes from the end of the covered period. Your covered period is an election on your part, 8 or 24 weeks. After that, so let's say you apply at the last day possible if you had the very first PPP loan on April the 10th. That would be July 25th, and you file on July 25th. Still, your lender has 60 days and the SBA 90 days to make the final decisions. So it could be another 5 months. You literally could be, before you get an SBA approval on this, if you file late, you could be into 2022. Hard to believe, but I just said it. Okay. Our special guest today is Dick Taylor, and Dick has another event. So I gave him the great opportunity to actually tape it. And we actually taped Dick, which we will pull up now. Dick Taylor, U.S. Marine, yesterday celebrated the Marines. He's the nonprofit Kern Patriot Partnership, which is doing great things. He's been doing this in the 2 years he's been retired as the Kern County Director of Veteran Services. Grew up in an entrepreneurial family, Taylor Tire and Brake, right down here in Bakersfield. I usually put Dick's picture up there, but when I introduce him, but not this time, because there you see it right there. Sign Dick is very proud of that you see on every entrance into Kern County. Kern County line where we honor veterans. So let me pull this up. A little recording earlier today with Dick Taylor, and let's get this going. and make sure I get my volume going on this right. So 1 second, please. Of course, first time we haven't had a guest live, I'm going to have a little bit of an issue, but let's go. Here we go.
Great, thanks.
So, Dick, it's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome. Thank you for joining us, and take it away.
Thank you very much, Kelly. It's an honor to be here with you and the guests that are joining us on this day where we commemorate, where we honor and recognize those who have served in the U.S. military, whether that be in a time of war or a time of relative peace or somewhere in between.
And Dick, that brings me to my first question I want to ask you, and that's going to be on the definition of a veteran.
Sure.
Because I see quite a few of them out there, a veteran, a service, disabled veteran. We see a lot of disabled veteran business enterprises, an acronym of DVBE and things like that. So can you enlighten us a little bit on Veterans Day about the proper definitions of each?
You bet, Kelly, and only because many of us that are veterans, we use this as a kind of a coping tool, and that is humor. And many times I'm not very good at it, but it's an attempt. And that is that there was the vintage record collector. He insisted on being buried with his collection because he wanted it to be his vinyl resting place. Yeah. So sometimes we'll put that, we should have like a groaner meter on how that pans out. So those of you listening, if you want to tune out now, there's your cue, but hopefully not.
Well, you got me on that one. I wasn't even ready for the drum roll on that one.
Right. So yes, sir. So the definition is of a veteran. I have a somewhat different definition than what the United States Department of Veterans Affairs labels a veteran. U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs considers anybody that served on active duty. This is from a benefit standpoint. That served on active duty, whether it be in time of war or not. And in most cases, that excludes veterans, men or women, who have served in the Guard, National Guard, or the reserves, and that did not serve on active duty other than for training or for their annual 2 weeks. So me as a veteran myself, and I served on active duty in the Marine Corps, and then I later served in the National Guard for several years. But to me, anybody that went through boot camp and wears the uniform of the U.S. military is a veteran. So, and you touched also on, so there's some veterans that have service-connected disabilities. That's essentially a veteran, and we'll cover one of the benefits about that a little bit later on, but that's essentially a veteran that had something happen to them during their service that has an effect on their life once they get out. It could be something like a hearing loss because of a high amount of noise, trauma, ringing in the ears, that type of thing. Or it could be something, not I say as simple as, but it could be something even like where somebody jumped off the back of a 5-ton truck when they were in service to the country and they boogered up their ankle, and which is no giant deal when you're 18, 19 years old. But then when you're 45, 50, 55, 60, some of those injuries really start coming home to roost. So it's things like that. But the definition of a veteran is anybody that has served on specifically active duty. But in my view, anybody that's ever worn the uniform, including the National Guard and Reserve.
I think there are some really fine programs out there in Kern County for veterans. And for a number of years, I believe you has headed up the Kern Patriot Partnership, among others. Can you tell us and go through some of the many programs and resources that are available to veterans or families of veterans that are out there now?
Of course. So the Kern Patriot Partnership, and we're very proud of that program. It was an idea that when I served in the Marine Corps and got out, But even prior to that, and even after I was out, we always thought it was, as a private business person, we always thought it was much too difficult as an employer to find veterans that were able to work, because we were a Goodyear dealership here in Bakersfield. We preferred hiring veterans. We wanted to give them a shot at it. So a number of years ago, about late 2014, early 2015, I had talked in the Kern Business Journal. I was interviewed, and I talked about that concept, and that there needed to be an opportunity to connect veterans with employers. There were already some programs in effect, but we thought they were too bureaucratic and too time consuming. So Chevron, as part of their philanthropic program, approached me and said, "Hey, we want you to apply for a grant to develop and implement this program." So we did. We called it the Kern Patriot Partnership. So at the time, I was the director of the Kern County Veteran Service Department. The County of Kern's information technology, their IT people, in partnership with Chevron, we developed that program. And essentially, it's veterans. It's connecting veterans that are seeking a quality career, connecting them with employers that are willing to give veterans a first look when they're ready to hire. There's no guarantee they're going to get a job, but at least gets them their foot in the door, because we thought veterans bring a lot to the table. And you and I have talked about this before, Kelly, and that is veterans are really no different than other people, and that is most of us are probably our own worst critic, and that we don't think that we bring to the table as many things as we do. And if you're a veteran, we thought those things of responsibility, being in charge of many times millions of dollars worth of equipment, if not millions, at least tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment, and especially once you're up in a leadership capacity. And also you're capable of working in a high stress environment with very strict guidelines and deadlines for completion, and completing that in a full capacity, and then being able to communicate with others, and then just go on to the next project. And just the basic things about showing up on time, get along with your co-workers, and having a great attitude. And those were some of the things that we did. And so that's how the partnership, that's how Kern Patriot Partnership was born. It still works to this day out of the Kern County Veteran Service Department, and we're very proud of it. Chevron continues to fund the program, and we have very dedicated people that help with things like resume creation. We don't do the resumes for them, but we help them turn the resume into something that they can be proud of, and also things like cover letters, interview skills, being able to rattle off the things that you bring to the table when you're going up against others that are competing for the same job, to be able to help you come out on top, whether it be during a job interview or during the application process.
Yeah, great program. The County of Kern has another program, Employment Training Resource, ETR. Mm-hmm. And I would imagine that you've worked with them over the year. They have programs that work with like on-the-job training contracts where they'll pay 50% for the veteran, and others. Yep. Have you had any good experiences with working with those or other related employment incentives that an employer might be able to get?
We do. We work with Employers Training Resource, America's Job Center, and have for several years. In fact, we have somebody in the office that is kind of a liaison between Employers Training Resource and Kern Patriot Partnership, because it's kind of we're in the same position as many of your guests that are listening today. In other words, we've been on that side of it. We've been on the employer side. And so we understand what people are looking for. We understand that they're looking for the most streamlined process possible. They kind of want their applicants to be, for lack of a better term, pre-screened, to make sure that they're at least capable and qualified for the position they're seeking. So it has been a really good working partnership with them. And in some cases, we found early on that some people would rather deal with employers training resource, but on the flip side of that, some said, hey, you know what? We've had some experience with them over the years, and we think we'd like to give Kern Patriot Partnership the view, even though their missions are very similar. We use some slightly different methodology, and we're a little more small and in some cases, employers training resource is a huge operation. And you mentioned they have a ton of programs that can assist employers. Ours is a little smaller, but we have people that work on taking a good resume and turning it into an exemplary, sparkly resume that will help it stand out from others. Not because we put gold stars on it or sprinkle glitter on it, but to keep it in a format that's so what people are looking for, whether it, sometimes even the format of knowing when you send a resume in, that in many cases you can't have a border around the outside like a line, because many employers, once that is scanned in, it comes across all jumbled on their end, and then that person gets kicked out of the consideration for that job because their resume had something as simple as a border on it. And many employers can't have that when they're scanning those resumes. But it's things like that, and there's nothing more rewarding, Kelly, than talking to an employer, or for that matter, a veteran, where the two have connected, and then the employer comes back to us, or rather we hear from a veteran say, hey, this is my dream job. And then the employer comes back to us and says, you know what, if you have like 2 or 3 more people like that, we would love to have them, because they were so happy with the way it turned out with the initial applicant.
Dick, I think that everybody out there, not everybody might be a veteran, but everybody knows a veteran. Everybody has a veteran as a neighbor, as a member of their family, etc. And there are some unique and really special veteran programs that a lot of people don't know about, including the veterans who really should know about them. Right. What are some of those programs that are available here in Kern County and maybe elsewhere that they can tap into and try to help out a veteran in need?
Well, there's a few of them that come to mind, Kelly. And one of the things, and it's interesting, I love presentations like this, because many times, just as you pointed out, sometimes it's not the veteran that we connect with. It's somebody that has a connection with a veteran, whether it be a family member or friend or coworker or neighbor. And they hear something, and then they in turn tell a veteran, and the veteran maybe had no idea it was out there. And one of my favorite programs, and it involves higher education, and that is a program that's part of the California Department of Veterans Affairs, and it's the College Fee Waiver Program. So the way it works in a nutshell is that if a veteran has a service-connected disability, some of you out there might know what that is. If you don't know what that means, it means that you might have something as simple as ringing in the ears because they worked in artillery, or they worked around jet engines, maybe they have some hearing loss, but they're rated as a service-connected disability. Doesn't mean they're not able to do anything. It doesn't mean they're a disabled person. Doesn't mean they're in a wheelchair or any of that. But with that rating, a veteran that has a service-connected disability, their children, their dependent children, can attend any community college, California State University, or University of California campus tuition free. It's a huge thing. I jokingly refer to it, but in reality, it's kind of accurate. It's one of the best kept secrets out there. And there's a few programs that are within that program, but essentially, if parameters are, if the veteran has a service-connected disability as rated by the VA, and it doesn't have to be 50% because they're rated in percentages, doesn't even have to be 10%. It can be as little as what's called 0%, meaning they have a disability that the VA says, yeah, we agree this happened to you when you served, but we're not going to reimburse you. We're not going to compensate you on a monthly basis for it. But those veterans, male or female, their children can attend those colleges and universities, as I mentioned, tuition free. And it's updated every year. It's a waiver of the fees. It doesn't cover books or room and board, that kind of thing. But it is a life changer. And many times it results in that child, that veteran, being maybe perhaps the first person and their family to ever attend a school of higher learning like college or university. So there's that one, and that is available through the Kern County Veterans Service Department. And Kelly's going to have this up on the screen. It's the 661-868-7300. The other program, again, so we'll switch from the younger part of that program for children of veterans that have a service-connected disability, and that is, there's a program. Let's say somebody has an aunt, an uncle, an elderly parent or grandparent or great-grandparent. There is a program referred to as Pension with Aid and Attendance. And Pension with Aid and Attendance reimburses the veteran for things like medical care, either at a facility like an assisted living facility, or it can also reimburse for somebody coming to provide some medical care in a veteran's home. And the parameters on this are that the veteran had to serve during a time of war. Doesn't mean they had to be in combat. Doesn't mean they even had to be on the front line. They could even be stateside. They had to serve during a period of war. So either World War II, Korean War, Vietnam, and other wars. They had to serve at least one day on active duty during that period of time, and they had to be discharged with an honorable discharge. And then their income and assets can't exceed a certain level. And rather than getting into all the specifics of that, I'll just tell you, many times it's worth looking into. And I'll give you a quick example of that. My wife's late aunt was a surviving spouse of a Korean War veteran. They lived in Tennessee. I was out here on one of their visits. I was, just because I get excited about my job and I want to share it with everybody. It's kind of like when I was in the tire business. When I would go through a parking lot, my wife would always elbow me after I was looking at people's tires, and I would want to let them know that, hey, by the way, your tire's worn out. It's showing the cord, or you got a nail in your tire they didn't know. But I'm constantly wanting to connect veterans and their families with benefits that in many cases they didn't know that they were eligible for. But my wife's aunt, surviving spouse of a Korean War veteran, her daughters were just beside themselves, because for those of you that are in this position, sometimes when you have an elderly family member that you're caring for, it can be very time consuming, very stressful. Sometimes people are very guilt ridden because they're split between their regular family time and their job, and they want to take care of their elderly person. They don't want to send them someplace. But what this does, and it did for my wife's cousins, is that it allowed her. Well, let me back up a little bit. So they came out here. We talked about this. So when they went back to Tennessee, and they tried to talk to somebody that was like one of my counterparts in Tennessee, and then they looked at them like they just stepped off of a spaceship from Mars, meaning they didn't know what the heck she was talking about. So she reached back out to me and said, "We don't know what to do, because these people back here don't know what it is you're talking about." So I said, we'll do it by mail, by email, by phone calls. So make a long story short, we're able to get her aunt get her application submitted. You needed things like bank statements and the discharge papers for her late husband, marriage certificate, that kind of thing, and a medical connection saying that you needed help with activities of daily living. That's an important thing. It's somebody that needs help with activities of daily living, like cooking, cleaning, getting dressed, going to the bathroom, that kind of thing. So we were able to get her that. It allowed her daughters to hire somebody to come in and care for their mom. And so then my wife's aunt lived out the next 2 or 3 years of her life. And it was great for everybody, because the daughters didn't have, they weren't running around having to care for mom all the time. They got a little bit of a respite in that. It's not a huge money-making thing. Nobody's going to get rich off of it, but it can be a life-changing thing for those that qualify for it. If you've got $500,000 in the bank, you're probably not going to qualify for it. It's needs-based, based on your income and your assets, but it is entirely worth looking into. And again, that's called Pension with Aid and Attendance. Wonderful program. Not everybody will qualify, but for those that do, it can make a huge difference in your life.
Great stuff. Dick, what's going on? We have a national cemetery here in Kern County that a lot of places don't have. Are there any special programs for that?
that we have one of the most phenomenal assets as the Bakersfield National Cemetery, which is off of the Highway 58. It's actually on Highway 223, Bear Mountain Boulevard, about a mile south of Highway 58. So it's on the road between Bakersfield and Tehachapi. It's on 500 acres donated to the VA by Tejon Ranch. They gave it to him lock, stock, and barrel, free of charge. But a veteran that served on active duty that received a discharge under honorable conditions is eligible to be buried in the Bakersfield National Cemetery. And there are multiple interment options, whether it be cremation, full body casket, and a few others. But the spouse of the veteran is also eligible to be buried in the same spot if they don't remarry. But let me give you an example. For instance, if a veteran's spouse dies first, they could be interred out there, and then when the veteran themselves pass away, then they can also be interred. It doesn't cover the cost of cremation or the casket, but it is a huge monetary relief for families, because once your remains cross the property line and to go on to the Bakersfield National Cemetery, and if you've never been there, it's beautiful just to go visit, because they're open Monday through 7 days a week from dawn till dusk. But once those remains cross the property line, everything else from that point on is paid for. The marker, whether it be a headstone or the columbarium marker, the opening and closing of the grave, the eternal care, and it is just a phenomenal resource. And for instance, Fresno County doesn't have that. The LA County, the Los Angeles National Cemetery is close to being full, and that's a ways away. But so Kern County draws from several nearby counties, including Ventura, San Luis Obispo, Fresno, and then counties to our east, Inyo and San Bernardino, and some of those. Riverside has their own national cemetery, but it is a phenomenal thing worth looking into. And you can also you can do a pre-eligibility determination application, and that's available. You can do that online because a lot of times people are like, well, I don't really know what to do. I want to make sure my loved ones know what my wishes are when I die. Well, you can do that, and you can talk to your kids about it. And it is a phenomenal option as opposed to a private cemetery.
Well, Dick, when I introduced you earlier, I talked about your current role, which we haven't even got into. There's so many other resources for veterans, and many of these people don't know about. But your current role is president of the nonprofit Patriots of Kern. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing and give us one of your successes recently? I want to hear some success.
Sure. I'll tell you some of the things we're most proud of. A number of years ago, we formed a 501c3, a nonprofit, and its goal is threefold. Its mission has three things that we concentrate on. One is to help out veteran-related projects. The other is to help out the Kern County Veteran Service Department down on Golden State Avenue for things that aren't in their county budget or that the federal government will not pay for. And then the third thing we concentrate on is a youth leadership and patriotism program called the Double Pups Youth Program. So we help out in all that. And I would tell you, I'm proud to chat about, as you can see, I sometimes I get long-winded on this stuff, but I'm excited about the things that we're successful at, and we help others be successful, and we want to celebrate their successes. But some of the most notable things recently within the last 3 years, everywhere there's a state or federal highway that crosses the Kern County line, we purchased, our nonprofit purchased with no cost for taxpayers, big metal signs that are approved by Caltrans that say Kern County line, where we honor veterans. And we have them up on, I-5, Highway 99, all the east-west running freeways like Highway 58, 46, all these other ones. There's 14 different ones. So we did that. Caltrans and Kern County Roads helped us install that. Install all 14 of those signs and they didn't make any special trips. just when they were in the area performing other maintenance on other signs, they would put those up. The signs were already existing. They said Kern County line. There's just a matter of putting the new ones up. That's one of our successes we're very proud of. One of the other things that we're very pleased to be instrumental in is there's a tiny homes project. It's the Bakersfield Veterans Village out off of Covey Avenue in North Bakersfield. And the property for those tiny homes for veterans, we donated to the California Veteran Assistance Foundation because they are the primary developer of the project. So we ended up with some property that was already zoned, and we donated that free of charge for this project to get going, and we're excited about that. And then to kind of tie in with our youth development program, we've had a number of our kids, well, actually they're kids, they're young adults now, that have successfully, either they're attending U.S. military academies, the Naval Academy in Annapolis, the Army, the U.S. Military Academy out of West Point, and some have already completed that and have moved on to that. You know, they've come back into the full circle, back into the civilian world, and are just, you know, we helped develop them into productive citizens, and the military honed them, just like the rest of us that are veterans, honed them into the productive citizens that they are. And we're very proud to be just a small component of introducing those people to, and I call it it's the principle of, with a little extra effort, you can run circles around your peers. And that's true whether it's in the military or the civilian life. But those are some of the things that I'm extremely proud of, and that we continue to do on a daily and monthly basis.
Dick, last question, and then I'm going to let you go because I know you have another special event here on Veterans Day. But yesterday was an important day for the Marine Corps. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Back November 10th, 1775, in spite of what Kelly might tell you, I wasn't born then. That is the birth date of the Marine Corps. So yesterday was the 245th birthday of the Marine Corps. It's a big dang deal to all Marines. We have a huge tradition where we have a cake cutting, and always the oldest Marine present gets served the first piece of birthday cake, and then he in turn, or she, passes that on to the youngest Marine present, and then they eat that, and then the next piece of cake is served back to the senior most Marine present. But it is full of tradition. And back in November 10th, 1775, there were 2 battalions of Marines that were formed by the Continental Congress. Literally before, months before the U.S. was formed in itself, the Marine Corps was it. So it's a big deal for all veterans. And we always read the comments from the 13th Commandant of the Marine Corps, General John Lejeune. And then we read it like the current Commandant, which is General Berger. We read his commandants that wish all Marines a happy birthday. And it's a big deal to remember the legacy of those that served in war and in peacetime from 1775 to present.
Well, Dick, happy Veterans Day. And not only thank you for your service, but thank you for your continued service to veterans, not only in Kern County, but all over our region. And I know you have a special event. Why don't you send us out tell us where you're headed to?
Sure. I'm getting ready to head out to the Guild House, which was part of the Henrietta Weil Child Guidance Clinic. And there's every Veterans Day for the last few years, they do a big deal where they honor veterans. And it's not a free meal, but it is a significantly discounted meal. And it's where they want to honor those of us, because I work as a waiter. My wife and I both work as volunteer waiters there. So they honor their volunteers that are veterans as well as veterans in the community. So it's something I look forward to every year. And if you've never been to the Guild House, I'll give you a shameless plug for them. It's down at 18th and F. It's like going to your great grandmother's house in an old Victorian home. And it's a beautiful, beautiful setting. And there's great home cooked meals. And it is just absolutely phenomenal. And you can look them up online at the Guild House website.
Yeah, 3 blocks from our office. Been there many times. Delicious.
Yep.
Have a very enjoyable Veterans Day. Thank you for joining us, Dick.
Thank you,
And
Cal.
and we'll have you back.
I appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for listening in. And I appreciate your dedication to our community. And having been in the private sector myself, I get it. And hope you all hang tight with all the stuff, all the craziness that's going on in our world. And we're certainly rooting for you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dick. Yeah, really. Local treasure, Mr. Dick Taylor, who's probably halfway through his dessert right now over at the Guild House. So thanks for joining us, Dick, and letting us know all the great programs. I need to give a little shout out to a couple of really beneficial people who have done some great work at the SBDC. Jennifer Bravo, Advantage HR Services, and also Mr. Larry Ray. I believe they're both Marines, and if I get this wrong, I'm going to be in really serious trouble. But a couple of veterans that have really done a great job with local businesses, and thank you not only for your service, but the great work that you do in addition. The resources that Dick mentioned, we're going to put those and send those out. So there'll be links to all of those resources, and including we're going to add the CSUB Veteran Success Center, which at the campus of CSUB, we have over 200 veterans, and we have a center on campus to try to help them get everything out of their education that they can. So also a couple things, maybe some of you last week saw Bob Phipps. I realize this is last week's brochure. He'll be back next Thursday also on the 17th, or excuse me, the 19th. So the 19th, we'll talk about it next week a little bit. Also, there's some interesting things going on at the Bakersfield Chamber where they're having these business roundtables for certain segments of the economy, such as retail, restaurants, your personal services now with gyms and fitness, and moving back a tier, which is anticipated. Really a good opportunity to get feedback and try to help get these business sectors back up and going. You can go to their website, it's thebacochamber.com, and they're coming up these business roundtables for restaurants, personal services. I believe the one was yesterday for retail. So do check that out. Also, as we move along, there's our sponsors. I want to thank them. A birthday wish to Circe Cox, another member of our consulting team. And then next week, we have joining us as our special guest, Lorna Kibbe. Lorna was here a while back, maybe a year or two ago. She is a Florida-based leadership consultant, and she's going to be talking about the 5 tips that bosses can do to make a difference. So a little leadership action next week after our talk that we get through on the pandemic relief programs. So that's it. That's a wrap for today on Veterans Day. So thank you for joining us. I think I'm going to go enjoy the rest of my holiday eventually. And we'll see you next week. So Kelly Bearden saying see you next week. Bye-bye now.